it's Dr. Sarah Gordon of the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. Welcome to episode 59. It's hard to believe we're here at 59 and coming up on a year anniversary. May 21st will be 1 year since had this idea and just launched it and went with it. As you can see, I am not by myself today. I have a guest, my friend Trevor Roe. Hi, Trevor.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Sarah.
Absolutely. I'm going to just do a little introduction. I'm going to do a little background information, and then we're just going to dive into this really interesting conversation today. So Trevor and I actually know each other from a martial arts school called Delaware Budokan. And Trevor is an upper belt, third degree black belt. I think when I met you, and it was several years ago, regardless, he was ahead of me, very far along ahead of me. And I was always just impressed by your level of intelligence and the way that you worked with me as a student. If we had to spar, I always trusted you with that. I knew that you would push me, but you wouldn't push me so far. And so I love the connection that we have. We're friends and we've known each other for a while. And he came to me with this idea of talking about intelligence today and just about, this model of human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And I said, Trevor, I love that idea because when we talk about human performance, we talk about physical performance and mental strength and all these aspects of human performance. I was thinking, wow, that really makes it a much more comprehensive conversation to focus on intelligence and how that fits into this whole framework of health and human performance. So today, this episode 59, we're calling it Thinking in a Complex World, Intelligence, AI, and the Future of Human Performance. And I would just want to give a little bit more background information about my guest. So Trevor Roe, he has a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering and a Master of Science in Cybersecurity from the University of Delaware. He is a network technology specialist at Delaware Technical Community College, excuse me. Like I said, he's a third degree black belt with Delaware Budokan. And this is interesting, a licensed ham radio operator. That's kind of cool. You don't see that much anymore.
No, you don't.
And I kind of want to say, and not to embarrass you in any way, but Trevor's 26. I mean, he has his master's and, you push hard, you're smart, and you're just a really wonderful human being. And I look up to you. I know I'm older, but I do look up to you. And thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Thank you, Sarah, Dr. Gordon. I admire you as well, and I hope to be like you and pursue my PhD one day.
Thank you.
But I
I
think I
think,
have plenty of time.
well, yes. I mean, life always gets complicated at every age, but I know you, and I know when you decide to do that, you'll do really well in it. And Trevor saw me a lot of days in the dojo walking in. Whew, a lot of fatigue, and the dojo really gave me a lot of good balance through some of that stress. So I was just grateful for that part of my life. Okay, so you came to me with this idea about talking about intelligence. So let's just start before we dive in, because we're going to get kind of on this like kind of micro level with it all. Why? Why this topic? Why the interest? Why did you want to even start to talk about it today?
To give a little more perspective on that conversation that we had, it was sort of a natural conversation. And when you invited me to talk on your podcast, I had to consider what it was that I'm qualified to talk about. And that begs the question, why intelligence? I think I have some of it, but not all of it. So, and I think, everyone has a degree of intelligence and maybe specializes in different things. And I believe that intelligence is the thing that helps you to situate yourself in your life. And it is the thing behind growth. It is the natural orientation that we want to follow. And it helps you to make sense of things. So it sort of underlies every aspect of human performance because all of the things that we do of our free will are driven by intelligence. It's just the thing that, like a magnetism, that points us in the right direction.
I think that's excellent. I mean, that's a great starting point for this conversation. And I have to tell you, as we talk about it, I might struggle a little bit because I feel, it's a little bit like abstract when we talk about it.
It
I mean,
is. It's
and
highly abstracted. So we're going to
right?
try to break it down, I hope.
Okay. And something when I was studying for this, when we think about intelligence, maybe our first instinct is to think about our IQ level. But I think that's
Yes.
not, I think we're going to go so much deeper than that. I don't think that is really,
IQ as a method of quantifying intelligence is controversial and very difficult. I think that many scientists believe that intelligence can be measured. I believe that rather than focusing on quantifying it, it's more meaningful to qualify intelligence because it is not really rooted in a numerical ground. So, quantifying intelligence is not really that helpful, but I do believe that IQ is something that's relevant, but we won't talk much about it today.
well, it's interesting because like when we talk about human performance and we talk about the data and the metrics to measure our performance, it's important, but there's so much more to it. There's like the life events, the life experiences, how people approach things, motivation. So there's a lot of things. So I know the numbers are always important, but I don't necessarily think that always gives us the whole picture. Now, that's spoken like a mixed methods researcher, quantitative and qualitative.
Exactly.
So,
Right. And you have the expertise to be able to look at data and numbers and make some conclusion out of it. And that
right.
is, a characteristic of intelligence.
But the numbers don't always tell the whole story. And that's why I think it's like that's where that qualitative piece. And I think that's what you're just saying is like we're going to dive a little bit deeper than just thinking about what somebody's IQ number is. Okay.
So, what sort of indicators are you looking for when you're evaluating someone's performance? Is there a framework that you're operating within?
Oh, that's a big question. I think the way to answer that and not go too far onto, just a conversation on human performance is I think when we talk about human performance, we have to understand it's individualized, right? We have to ask ourselves, what is the end goal? What is somebody trying to achieve? And what's the motivation behind it? We kind of, so I think those are the kind of basic questions that we ask, and then we can look at it from so many different angles in terms of, what that path looks like for somebody. Now, let me ask you. And that was kind of a broad answer to that question, but I feel like we could spend the whole episode on that,
Oh, I'm
because like
sure, but
just
I hope to
yesterday,
stay.
yeah,
I hope to stay talking about that.
yeah, I mean, just yesterday was Ironman Texas. So what motivates somebody? How do you get there? You get there with science, you get there with hard work, and you get there with motivation, you get there with good nutrition and rest and all these aspects of human performance. Tomorrow is the Boston Marathon. It's a totally different event. How do you get there? You get there totally different training and different metrics. And so it just kind of depends on what that person is looking to achieve. But I think at the heart of it all, which is why this is such an interesting conversation, is that we have to have some level of intelligence to make good decisions for ourselves, even in human performance, even in training for something, when to push harder, when to pull back. So all these things are going on in our mind. So you presented with to me these three major areas, models of intelligence, and I would love to go through these categories with you.
I have been thinking about intelligence for a long time, and this is in no way scientific. This is entirely based on anecdotal experience. But I did come up with a 3 point model for what I consider to be the core components of intelligence. And of course, they're very broad categories. But go on. Would you like to introduce them?
Sure. Okay, so the first one is called the well of knowledge. Now, what does that
That's
mean to
correct.
you?
Now, I choose the well of knowledge or the wellspring of knowledge because it is characterized by breadth and depth, and it is simply the reference material that you have at your disposal. For people, that would be our lived experiences and the experiences that we understand, stories that we've heard, and storytelling is a major component to our anthropological understanding. Um, let's see. Oh, it can be in the form of firsthand experiences, but very importantly, that is not the only way to learn by experiencing things yourself. And that's why reading and storytelling are so critical to our culture because we can gain the experiences of other people and our ancestors by understanding their experiences.
Hmm, that's
So
interesting.
that's the first facet, how you situate yourself within what it is that you know,
Okay. Culturally based?
of course.
Okay.
Because we're only exposed to the things that are around us generally. And this has changed with the advent of the internet. And I believe that people are becoming more culturally aware and culturally sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And that has broadened our understandings as a species. Everyone can benefit from a higher degree of cultural exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And it does require sensitivity. We have to try to be understanding because, based on our own cultural framework, a lot of things that are commonplace in other cultures are not going to make sense.
So within the well of knowledge, are we expanding that? Are we adapting to it in a different way because we have access to more information? Are we changing?
I think that, as I mentioned to you before off recording, there is a schism that we're seeing now in the world of the time before the internet was freely available to most people and
Okay.
the time after. And there has been an instantaneous explosion of the well of knowledge for the average person because even when I was in school, my teachers taught me you'll never have a calculator in your pocket at all times. And now I do. And I
Hmm.
carry an encyclopedia in my pocket at all
Through
times.
the
And
phone.
I can search anything on Google and go to Wikipedia and access reliable sources to gain knowledge and information of anything that I
Mhm.
don't have to know.
I have a question that I want to ask you later, but maybe it fits here now. Just because we have more information and we can have this well of knowledge across cultures, across, all different characteristics, is it making us more intelligent or are we just gathering more information? Because without, and maybe that leads to the next one, critical thinking. Without really thinking about what you're learning or reading or hearing, it's just information processing.
Right.
What do
And
you think?
so to work backwards a little bit and pull it into the framework of human performance, we might ask, how do you know that a human is really performing? Or are they simulating performance? And there are outcomes and consequences that we would want to evaluate to confirm that we think that someone is performing at a high level. It's one thing to see someone running or maybe running fast, but then if they can do a 5 minute mile or actually complete a marathon, then we would say that we can qualify them as successful in that regard.
Okay.
So, to characterize intelligence as one component being things that you know, it is a little unconventional to change that to say information that you have access to. I would say that the average person has more intelligence because they have access to the internet, because they are able to access information that they might not otherwise have. Um, it's like having reference material on hand. I don't need to know all the presidents in order. If I did need to, I could just look it up. And so, what's the difference between me having that information memorized versus needing to refer to some material to know that? I mean, in health, you might need to refer to some material on biological processes that it would be impossible to memorize it all. And that's
Right.
really the core of what's interesting in the developments in anthropology. The problems that people are tackling are bigger and bigger, and more complex, and it takes one person to do it. And that is the consequence of this monumental increase in intelligence. And starting with the well of knowledge, that's the easiest one to measure because, yes, we have access to more information now. And that's why we're in the information era.
Okay, so you gotta bear with me
That's
because
big. It all ties
I
together.
know, and it hurts my head a little bit. Okay. I was thinking when as you were talking, I was thinking like the GPS, right? Like we used to have
Sure.
paper maps, we used to study the paper maps, and we could, now we just plug in the address, it gives us the information, and we don't really need to think for ourselves. But so I guess would that be critical thinking? Like we don't really need to think, well, okay, I know the GPS is telling me to go this way, but in my mind, I know if I go that way, it's shorter. So that's my thought, and it, like I said, it's kind of abstract. Hopefully it makes sense. Like with critical thinking,
So
how do we
let's
not
introduce the other
lose that?
components.
Okay, how do we not lose that with all the information that we
So
have?
the next component that I would design would be critical thinking, and just to get them all out of the way, that is separate from creative thinking.
Okay,
And the component of critical thinking is comprehensive. Many disciplines separate critical thinking, but I would just describe reasoning, planning, decision making, all of these,
okay,
anything that is referencing and leveraging the wealth of knowledge, but also reasoning as critical thinking.
okay.
And are you asking how do we maintain that when we're relying more on reference material?
Yes.
Well, it's just like when we want to improve our depth of knowledge, we might read about a subject and
Okay,
we could study and go to school. And by that means we would improve our well of knowledge. Um, Critical thinking is also improved through practice. And so we would want to tackle difficult problems and turn
okay.
things over in our head. I'll give you a great example. This has
Okay.
been so fun. I recently subscribed to the New York Times games and their word games, and I really enjoy them. And it has shown me something about the way that the human mind works because it's accessing language as a medium for play, doing crossword puzzles where you have hints to what words there are, and then you have to recall what that word is. And sometimes it's a common thing, but we just have to connect the dots between um, what the word actually is. And so there's actually hardware that we rely on for thinking. That's our brain. And
Okay.
language is a great example we'll probably come back to of a medium by which we make order out of the world. And language affects the way that we understand things. So critical thinking and understanding are very similar, but distinct, I would say. Um, Language can affect the way that we understand the world. And one good example I can give is color. In English, we have the words for red and pink, but in Chinese, they don't have such a word as pink. They just call it light red. And so something that is pink might be a distinct color, and we would say an English speaker might categorize it differently than a Chinese speaker who would put pink with red.
Uh, It feels like adaptation. We adapt to our environment, our surroundings, our culture, all those kinds of things. And if we relate it to human performance in terms of, physical performance, it's about adaptation. So now we're asking our brain, we ask our muscles to adapt. We go to the gym, we strength train, you train for martial arts. We do all these things where we ask our muscles to adapt. We're asking our brain to adapt.
That is really interesting. I hadn't considered that, the nature of adaptation. And so
Right?
we might ask, how do our muscles know what to do?
Right. Well, go ahead.
I'm happy to elaborate on that. Of course, we have a blueprint. We have it's programmed into our DNA, And so in some ways it's deterministic or algorithmic. If you do exercise, you will increase your flexibility and you will increase your strength because, you're continuing to eat and take in protein, and then your muscle mass is going to increase as a result of, oh, what do they call it? Um, Exposure, something like that.
What, your muscle increasing? Muscle hypertrophy?
Well, it's the conditions that your body go through. So, like the difference between pigs and hogs. A pig
Okay.
is like domesticated; they're soft and pink and fatty. But
Okay.
if you let a pig go into the wild, the change in the environment surrounding that pig will cause it to grow coarse hair and tusks, and it'll become, aggressive. It's the same DNA, but the environment causes a change in the expression of the genetic code.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
a man living a very stressful life or lifting heavy weights regularly and ingesting a lot of protein is going to have big muscles.
Hmm.
It
Interesting.
seems to track pretty obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation because, I don't think you can consider human performance without considering what's going on with the brain, because the brain is telling us how to perform, right?
Right.
The brain
Exactly.
is
But
telling us
also our DNA.
motivation. Well, in our DNA, what we bring to the table genetically too, but the brain also impacts motivation, mood, the chemicals, the physiological components,
Right. The
um,
hormonal component.
hormonal components. So this is so interesting. Okay, so we did well of knowledge, critical thinking. Can we move on to the next one? Okay.
Yes.
This one, I feel a little bit more comfortable with this third category, creative thinking. That feels like
I
my
would be happy
space.
for you to talk more about
Oh,
it
no, no, I
because
won't. No, you go. I mean,
I
just
wouldn't consider myself a creative type.
okay. That's interesting. Okay, so you go first, then I'll put my spin on it.
Well, creative thinking is really, this is all characteristic of human intelligence. And of course, there are
Okay.
many kinds of intelligence and maybe many kinds of human intelligence, even. And creative thinking, for me, is just a catch all of the things that don't fall into other categories or are not well explained by measurable metrics. And what is it in the capacity for an artist to capture something in a picture or a painting, or even, a poet to translate really interesting ideas into words? And that essence is behind what creative thinking is.
I also think creative thinking can be, um, let's just think about survival skills, being creative in terms of thinking outside the box, allowing yourself to think differently. Maybe you draw from the well of knowledge and critical thinking, but having that aspect of creative thinking allows you to think more around whatever it is that you're being faced with. Did that make any
Hmm.
sense? You know what I mean?
Well, I would think
Or is that problem
like that
solving?
that would fall under problem solving
Problem
more.
solving. Okay.
And
Eh.
it is interesting when you talk about inference or an intuitive sense. Inference would be squarely critical thinking. It's the ability to extrapolate from incomplete data, connect the dots. But intuition is the unverbalized component that seems
Yeah.
very creative. And I
Intuition.
think creative energy is squarely rooted in a productive thing. It's the human ability to produce something, and producing conditions is one aspect of survival, and maybe it's very related to what you do. I think that we are naturally inclined to do certain things, and that's a consequence of our intelligence, to be sure. But it is better to produce conditions in which we are naturally more able to succeed.
Hmm.
I think that's what you do.
Hmm. Well, here's the question. And I don't know if we're ready to bridge this to AI or not, but we can't have this conversation. We have to have this conversation and talk about artificial intelligence. Okay.
Certainly. It's very relevant now.
And and I don't want to jump ahead with it because I want to just start with like what it is and just, go into it from the baseline of human intelligence in this model we're going through. But creativity, you know, are we like I've seen people ask, AI to or put a picture, let's say you take a pretty photograph and then you put it into AI and you ask it to turn it into like a Monet or a Picasso and it creates or make it into an abstract. And so it just takes it and just creates this new version of it. So the question is that creativity with a new tool, or is that creative thinking with a new process of, where does that line of creativity, is there a line between human intelligence and artificial intelligence?
This is such an interesting question. And I think that you're really getting at something there. This is the prime question of the ethics of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Um, and to put it in perspective, I think that in a more physical way, we have recently relied on machines more to do physical jobs. And we would call that a tool. And that's a consequence of the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution. So I'm going to circle that back.
Okay.
And now we have tools that can complete rather than mechanical work that requires labor from people and then would produce a product that is a measurable outcome. We have created programs that can run on machines that can do intellectual labor,
Mhm.
and they produce outcomes that are measurable. So all that is to say, this is a very real thing that we're dealing with, and it's having very real effects on the world around us. So is it work? Is it meaningful or valid? You should research or hear what painters had to say about the early cameras and the beliefs that they held about photography as a profession. And
Mhm.
this is what was discussed in my engineering ethics class when I was in undergrad. They brought up the early camera as the bankruptcy of painting and expressionistic art. Is photography an invalid method of creating art because you don't have to actually pick up a brush and paint or a pencil and sketch? I'm not an artist. I can't answer that.
Or is it a new tool to look at the world in a different way?
It's certainly capable of things that have not been possible before,
And AI
which
is
is
like
very
that
scary.
next. Yeah, and then AI is like this, this, what did you call it? A schism? Did I say that correctly? It's like it's pushing
Yes.
us. I've heard things like mass disruptors. Like it's just changing the way we think, the way we work, the way we create. So let's go back, okay?
Yes. Can I take a step back and introduce
Yes,
another idea? I wanted to
sure.
touch on this.
Absolutely.
When we think about human intelligence, I think a really good place to start, because we're taking a circuitous path through this subject. Um, I like to think of Jean Piaget, not to be confused with Pavlov. He was the guy with the dogs.
Okay.
Piaget studied the development of young children, and he divided their psychological capabilities, or maybe standpoint, into different categories based on age. There are different markers of human intelligence as it is expressed through behavior that emerge at different ages. A very well known example is that very young infants seem to lack depth perception. And so there are capabilities that the mind has that rely on structures in the brain. So this is the difference between hardware and software.
Hmm.
Software is sort of not a physical thing. It is like code or the
Okay.
program of the mind. It relies on the hardware, which are neurochemical pathways and electrochemical pathways through the brain. Um, Let me refer to my notes here. Okay. So Piaget explains that young children seem to develop their understanding of the world through building schemas. And this is a word that I use frequently when discussing intelligence. Schemas are rule sets, they're frameworks. And so we hold something like an apple and we drop it and we observe that it falls. So we build a theory to say that every time I drop something, it's going to fall.
Okay.
And we test it to see whether that theory holds true. And young children do this with everything. And in fact, adults do it too. We make observations about the world, and then we test those observations, and we decide whether or not they're true. When we break the rules that we've constructed in our mind, then we change our schema. This is a process that makes people uncomfortable. Children seem to be pretty flexible in their way of thinking, and I would observe that as people progress through their lives, schemas, they tend to crystallize or fossilize. Those are two different things. People have more robust ways of thinking that are more resistant to change as they age. And it takes a certain degree of humility to be flexible in the way that you think.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you like to segue into artificial intelligence? Because I can give an
Yeah,
introduction to that.
sure. And I just thought it was just so interesting what you just said, because
I know it's a lot.
no, 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 no. I'm I'm processing it. I wonder as we get older, and even as we have this conversation about AI, coming into AI, like I'm going to be 60 and I'm, you know, embracing it at almost 60 versus somebody coming into it like your age, early 20s, mid 20s. We really have to, I guess, and I don't even know if this is true or not, but it's like, we, what am I trying to say? In human performance, the research is very clear. You can strength train at any age, you can still develop muscle. You can still have positive gains in strength, right? You can adapt at any age. So I think that what you were just saying about, as we get older, we're not quite as maybe open. I wonder how much of that is like set in your way thinking versus really what we can physiologically handle. Because I wonder how much how much capacity of our brain we really even use. So I think as we move into AI, I think at any age we can embrace it. We just have to be open to it. So that's what I guess.
I think you're spot on
Is
in
does that make
extracting the
sense?
point of my diatribe. Yeah, you nailed
Okay.
it. The
Uh,
question is
That
open.
was
I mean,
hard.
how much? Yeah, you did great. That was really good. To recap what you said, I mean,
Okay.
how much of our limitations are mental, which
Yeah.
we want to believe can be overcome, and
Yeah.
how much is physical, and we really can't do anything about it.
Right.
I think it's fantastic that we can continue to strength train at any age.
Right.
That's probably very good for you.
And see progress, you know?
Hmm.
It's just that our minds sometimes limit us in terms of what we think we can do. It's a big
So I hate to be,
conversation in aging and longevity, and a whole different frame
yeah,
of thinking in terms of aging. Okay, so go ahead. Bring us into
I
artificial
hate to be
intelligence.
the bearer of bad news. I do have more to say. And this is something I studied in my psychology class in undergrad. Unfortunately, there is research that indicates that as you get older, the electrochemical pathways in the brain lose their ability to reshape themselves, and we
Hmm.
lose neuroplasticity in a material way.
Okay.
So there is a physical limitation on our brain's ability to change and reshape its underlying hardware,
Hmm.
and that is a process called fossilization.
Okay.
So a good example is learning language, which is a very mechanically stressful task for the brain. It is so mechanically stressful that we have actually developed specialized areas in the brain that have hardware or certain circuitry that is specifically designed for language production and language processing. And these are the Broca and Wernicke areas in the brain.
Hmm.
At a certain age, it becomes exceptionally difficult to learn a new language because the neuroplasticity required is insufficient. and you will really struggle with recall at the least. At certain ages, you become almost incapable of learning to produce new sounds, and that's a mechanical thing. That's something we do with our mouths. And there are people who, that speech therapy exists, but when learning a new language, there might be sounds that you're unable to perceive, uh, things
So,
like that.
so here's a thought. As we talk about artificial intelligence, we can rely on a tool like an app or something with AI to help us translate words, or let's say we're going to visit a part of the world where we don't know the language, and that can help us as a tool because we don't have the language base to go into that new culture. But by having these new tools, it then increases our depth of our well of knowledge. So it's an example of how AI can broaden our knowledge as a tool. Because like you're saying, we don't necessarily, if you tried really hard, perhaps you can learn a new language at an older age. It just takes a more effort than when you're younger. But if we can use these tools that we have now, we can expand our knowledge of the world through the tools.
Right,
That's a
certainly.
positive way. That's a positive way that
And
AI can
that
influence
is a
our lives.
positive spin on it. And that's just immediately unlocked. You can go do that now. The tools are available, and
Yeah,
you can just do it. And in that sense, we can instantaneously learn languages. So
yeah,
is there any shame in using a translator? Does that make you less intelligent? Not at all, because it unlocks more for you to experience.
yes. It makes you
So we
resilient.
are running out of time, and I haven't done my diatribe on
Go
artificial
ahead,
intelligence.
take the floor.
So I will launch into it. For the sake of this conversation, I'll only contrast artificial intelligence against human intelligence, which
Go
we've
ahead.
discussed fairly extensively. And I come back to language because it is a computationally difficult process. And also, the act of providing semantic context, or in other words, meaning, is sort of abstract. So it's something we interact with daily. But to get to the point, artificial intelligence is the product of machine learning. And
Okay.
we have built machines. I'd love to talk about this more. This is my specialty. We have built machines that, in many ways, copy the structure of the human brain, both in hardware and software. Artificial intelligence excels at tasks that humans are not physically suited to doing. An example would be complicated computations. They can solve mathematical problems instantaneously because that's what the circuitry is designed to do. Another example would be pattern recognition. And this is a task that the human brain is exceptionally well suited to. But the reason that computers can do these tasks better, maybe, is because the hardware that powers them is so fast. Modern computers perform calculations at billions or maybe trillions of cycles per second.
Hmm.
And they can also access an extremely wide register of information very quickly. So you could theoretically load, talking about artificial intelligence, you could load every single Harry Potter book into a context window of an AI language model, which is one type. Maybe I can list out the types here. And then you can ask it any question on Harry Potter. It'll become an instant expert.
Wow. By the way,
That's one
take your
example.
time. We don't have to rush, so it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I want, no, it's fine.
Then for the technologically uninitiated, I actually have Claude here, the current leading AI model for reference.
Okay.
Now, I have lost access to, let me find my last chat
Yeah, I've just
because I
heard,
asked it for reference.
well, somebody, because I'm starting to use ChatGPT, and then somebody I know from school was just saying Claude, they felt like Claude was, better than ChatGPT, but I don't know enough about all that yet, but you can
Okay.
explain a bit.
So for someone who's not technical, what you're going to be seeing now called AI are products that are built using machine learning. And AI is a little bit of a buzzword, but it's a general take on what computers can do. So basically, a language model is what we all think of when we think AI. That's one type. And it is a data structure that uses tokens to assign meaning to symbols, and that would be text. So it ingests large amounts of data of plain text English on the internet, and using pretty sophisticated mathematical models and the application of transformers, it assigns numerical value to sequences of tokens and then puts it through a washing machine. It
Hmm.
does this again and again and again and again. And at the end of it, it spits out a sequence that has meaning. And the meaning of the language that it's processing comes from how the words are tied together. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. That's a very technical approach.
You know what I was thinking as you're explaining that? Like, when did this start? Like, when did, like, is somebody like 20 years ago sitting and, like, when did all this start that now we're here? Was it just going on behind the scenes and we weren't aware of it? Like, now it's because it's
Oh,
so
yes. Yeah.
part of our lives now. When did this start?
This has been a long time technical development. I think I couldn't tell you when the earliest machine learning models became available. I mean, they were public in 2017.
Yeah.
So that was 9 years ago. Machine learning previously, it was an application suited to solving basic problems with computer. An older example is computer vision. Computer vision is what's called a classification problem. And if you wanted to read every license plate on every car as it's driving by, this is a real thing. It's called
Okay.
flock. You would, in the 1980s, have to sit a guy on the sidewalk and tell him to write everything down.
Okay.
Well, now we have the ability to take video and take the frame, the picture of every person's license plate as they're going by, and we feed this each picture into a data set. And then there's two ways to do it. This would be a supervised classification problem. You would go through 100,000 pictures of license plates from all different angles and
Mhm.
label every single number that appears. So the computer learns to identify every possible representation that can be a 3 and a 4 and a 5. And then you run it through training, which applies a math problem to the classification, which is done manually. And that's the supervision. And then you have a pre-trained model. And that's the GPT is a generalized pre-trained model. Then you can give it data it's never seen before. So it's got a labeled data set that's a reference material. And then it can look at new license plates, new pictures, and identify all the numbers in each sequence. So the question is, how accurate is it?
Mhm.
If I sit on the corner and I read every license plate going by, the faster the car is driving, the less likely I'll be able to write it down accurately in time.
Mhm.
Now, a camera can take a pretty good picture of a license plate as it goes by, but the model, they might achieve 99% accuracy. So
Wow.
they'll make the same kinds of mistakes a human might. They'll read a 7 for a 2 or a 0 for an O, stuff like that. And these are the tasks that define the nature of artificial intelligence. They're very basic, repeatable tasks that come from pattern recognition.
Hmm.
That's a very long winded answer.
Well, let me think for a second. I have to absorb that for a second. I mean, here's my initial thought, just hearing you. We're not going back. AI is here to stay, right? We're not gonna not ever have it. We don't even know what the future looks like with it. So
You
it's
can't
here,
put the genie back in the bottle.
right? So it's here. and how it starts to integrate in our lives, we're gonna have to adapt again. And as you were talking about things, getting faster and just I don't even have the word because I this is a little bit outside. I mean,
I know.
this is
Maybe I should
pushing.
stop
No, no, no,
teaching you because
this is good. No, 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 this is good. I was thinking of an article I just read in terms of performance and human performance, and then and how do you regulate the technology that's making athletes faster, right? They're getting faster in their shoes, they're getting faster in the equipment. I mean, all these things, supplementations, things like that people are just the athletes are getting so much faster. And so I don't think we're going to stop. I think that I mean, technology always seems to make us go faster. Um, and we're seeing
with
it,
compounding returns.
yeah, and we're seeing it in sport too. I guess the question is, what am I trying to ask? Um, I guess you have to jump on board. You can't not. I mean, it kind of reminds me of this book that I read in school about researchers and scientists, the ones that wouldn't adapt to the new ways of thinking and were kind of left behind. So we have to adapt. We have to be forward thinking and use AI, look at it as a way to broaden our perspectives on life. Um, I don't know. That's the best I can come up with from all of that.
I can understand if that
I
makes
don't feel
people
very
uncomfortable.
intelligent.
Oh, this is my specialty. You have your
Okay.
specialty as well. I would know
Well,
nothing about science and sport and medicine.
but I mean, but I have a question, and I guess it's kind of what I'm trying to ask you. It's like, you know, what are we training to become with AI? How can we use it? What are
You
we,
ask the best questions. These are
well,
really good questions. Um, there is someone introduced me to this idea. It was a video I saw online of a very intelligent person who stated this. It's so profound. If we take the whole of human intelligence as a thesis and the
okay.
thing that we are familiar with, then artificial intelligence acting as a counterpart is its antithesis, which sounds like a bad thing. And the work that we have to do is to bring those together in combination to act as a synthesis.
Hmm. Hmm. What happens if you
In
can't
many
adapt?
ways,
What if you can't adapt? What does that look like?
you if you cannot adapt, then those who can will be able to do things that you cannot. That's just it. In many ways, artificial intelligence is the missing piece and the very far extended counterpart to the amazing thing that is human intelligence.
Right. Well, how do you think they differ? Just to kind of, what do you really, I'm just curious, like, what can humans do that AI can't do besides the large computational? I know you said AI can do these large computational. I mean, I feel like here's an example that I kind of tell myself, even with the podcast, right? I can use ChatGPT and different AI tools to help me come up with maybe a structure, but AI is not going to tell me your specific story, what motivated you to become a third degree black belt, what motivated you to go into cybersecurity, information technology. So the human element of somebody's story, the uniqueness and individuality of your life, AI can't replicate. I mean, AI can't take that
Well,
from. I
you
know,
may
but
be
I mean,
surprised.
okay. Well, so what can we do
Let's
as
say,
humans that AI can't do for us? How can we stay human?
well, that's there you go. There's the question. How do we stay human?
How do we stay human?
Gosh. So I say you may be surprised because I'm going to continue scaring the audience here. If you
Okay.
take as a thought experiment, this has been done with twins to various extents in history. If someone were to progress through my entire life in first person, and experience everything that I had experienced, but they had a different mind, what would be the consequence? And obviously the paths would diverge immediately because they wouldn't have been me and make the decisions I made. But if
Okay.
someone were to observe every aspect of your entire life and to be able to read your mind at all points, and all this is compressed down to a little thing, and then it's like there, and then you're presented with a choice, and this model is presented with a choice. Would they make the same choice? And the root of the question, these are all data questions, it's data
Hmm.
science, is how accurately can we make a model that explains truth in the real world? This is the thing that language does. When we use language, the semantic meaning of words capture the essence of things that exist in the real world. They are not words, they are not imaginary. Things in the real world are described by words. And
Hmm.
we humans created all of the systems, all of the rule sets that describe the natural world. We have just gotten so good at building that the things that we are building themselves now.
Wow. I feel like
So we
go ahead.
can't lose our humanity. We will always remain human.
Okay.
Just because I can't run a marathon doesn't make me any less human. The people that you train can, and that's
Well,
amazing. Great.
I, as you were just talking about the truth, I feel like it brought me back to like Aristotle, like what these early philosophers would have thought about AI, you know, and truth and finding meaning in life. And so I don't know. I think if we and you made the really great example about the painter kind of not embracing a photographer. Well, what about the black and white and darkroom like Ansel Adams photographers not embracing digital photography? Right? And then digital photography and the big cameras with the tripods, not embracing our phones, the cameras on our phones. So I just think that this is like the next progression, the next, and you said at the beginning, a major shift in how we perform as humans,
And
and how
again,
our
I'm thinking of
brain
the audience.
and the brain
I
has to catch
imagine,
up.
oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just say the brain, we have to we have to tell ourselves that we can adapt, we can embrace it, we can be open-minded, and we can grow with AI.
Or not.
Or not. Right, it's your decision, but I think you will be left behind to a certain degree. Now, maybe there's a balance. Maybe, like I draw a lot of inspiration from being out in nature, right? And that's not really a space that I find AI, except on my phone if I'm taking pictures. I'm sure there's something going on there. But all right, here's what I want to do. This was a great conversation. I want to give you I want you to say whatever you want to say to our audience to inspire them about it or educate them about it, whatever you feel on your heart that you want to share about human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
Well, thank you, because there's just so much to say and so many unexplored threads that we could continue chasing. But due to the time restraints, I think it's best not to. For the sake of our conversation, if you're more interested in learning about AI, the resources are available. And I will relay what I have heard. The latest models, as of just February, March, April of 2026, have made leaps and bounds. The
Hmm.
free models that are available are lagging behind by about a year as of right now. So if you really want to see what AI is capable of, buy a cheap subscription and try it.
Of
There's no
what?
better way.
Of what? Cheap subscription of what?
The AI model of your choice.
Oh, okay. So
So
like,
again, I'm thinking of the audience here. They may be wondering, what does this have to do with me? Where do I start? Or how do I use this?
mhm.
Because, when you're in nature or working in the real world, intelligence is not immediately visible. It's not really present. Although it might be interesting to say, what kind of intelligence do plants express, for example?
Interesting.
Um, The kind of AI that the average person is going to be exposed to are language models or other context driven models. And these can do thinking for you. This is the problem, but it's also a solution because, as we briefly mentioned earlier, in the world, we are now inundated with so much information and
Mhm.
so many decisions to be made every day.
Mhm.
At a certain point, because the problems that we're taking on are getting larger and larger, and we're being expected to do this as individuals rather than as a team or a community,
Mhm.
we will need to rely on tools that can do some of this thinking for us. And I would say that if you have bottlenecks in your life where you're experiencing challenges that you're not able to overcome, tell me what you think of this. I would suggest building systems that serve you. And if you can't design a system that makes the solution work, you can ask someone for help. And that might be a professional or it might be an AI agent. Now, I don't
Interesting.
recommend attending AI therapy, but that's something that exists.
Yeah. Wow.
So I've gone off track, and to get back
No,
to what
it's
language
interesting.
models are, they are simulacrums of a thinking, talking person. They can hold a conversation, you can ask them questions, and actually, you can feed them whatever context you like. They'll become an instant expert on written material, and then you can ask it complicated questions.
Hmm.
These are very cool things that you can do. If you need to get to a place of understanding about something, you take a large chunk of research information, you put it into an AI model, and then you just ask it questions as it comes naturally to you. And that is how you use AI.
Hmm. I like I got all these things. I mean, okay, just 5 more minutes. Fatigue. How do we manage fatigue with all this? So much information.
I did some research recently because of mental fatigue, and I
Cognitive
found
fatigue.
that because I get plenty of sleep, I try to get at least 8 hours of sleep a day, and I
Mhm.
find that it does not help my mental fatigue. And the research that I found indicates that physical fatigue is resolved by resting, but mental fatigue is not resolved by physically resting. We must take time to mentally rest. And it's so hard to do that, to put away the screen, to detoxify from, information all the
Mhm.
time.
Hmm. That's so interesting. As you're talking, I was just thinking about um, your mom who I had on the show last year. We talked about sound healing, and she does yoga practice and meditation, all these things that kind of we can train our body, our minds to kind of balance the information overload that we have too. So, there's one other thing I was going to say to you as you were just talking, and I can't remember. I have fatigue.
Maybe it'll come back. I hope that the audience is keeping up, but I think we're nearing the end of our conversation. But
Absolutely.
thank you so much for listening to me today and asking such great questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we could have another conversation about it. And if anybody, post questions, if you have questions for Trevor, I can get them to him and then we can answer them in the comments to the video, to the episode. And yeah, I feel like I just went to the gym. I worked out really hard. My brain hurts. I need to go.
And that's another thing about intelligence is how easily does things come to you? Not that it's not easy for you.
Well, one last point. I think it's really important in these conversations about human performance. There's so much individuality in all of it, right? And so, how we approach things that we're passionate about, things that have meaning to us. I mean, what we're talking about today is, I guess, as far as artificial intelligence is like, think of it as a tool and how can it enhance the quality of your life? And yeah, so that's it. Wow, I feel like
That's
I
a good
really
place to leave
stumbled.
off.
Well, I feel like I really stumbled into an area. But this is good. This is good, Trevor. You pushed me. I appreciate it. Just like you pushed me in the dojo, you pushed me here today. All right, everybody. Now you know why I had Trevor Roe on the show. He's just a really intelligent, amazing person. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll come back on the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast.
Thank you. I feel like we didn't even get to half of the conversation that I thought we would have. So
Well,
definitely ask. I will answer questions that come back in the comments. And maybe I'll just drop a disclaimer that I'm not a scientist or really an expert, just a specialist and someone who thinks a lot.
okay, let's do it again. Let's just call this
Part
episode
one.
part one, 59, part one. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. All right. Bye.
Thank you.